It's an absolute pleasure to start back with youth services at the heart of youth homelessness prevention. We all know that youth services play a key role in preventing homelessness, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Laura and Phil to discuss how Upstream Cymru is supporting the youth service. Earlier on, we heard about collaboration is key, partnership is key, and it's a wonderful partnership. So without any further ado, Laura, welcome, and I'll just hand over to you.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Okay, I hope everyone can see that. So thank you very much. I'm Laura Williams. I'm a Youth Service Manager for Cardiff Youth Service. So just to start off, really, what's going well in Cardiff? Really, the Upstream as a tool, as a screening tool, as a programme, really fits into what we're trying to do as a youth service. You know, it meets the principles of youth work, that it's young person led, you know, the entire wraparound support, you know, is driven by a young person. The young person's always at the centre of that, and their voice is central to that provision that's being offered to them. You know, and I think a lot of the tools that we're already using in schools to identify young people that need support, perhaps, you know, initially we don't really have that voice from young person right at the very start. You know, it's often a school or you know, a teacher, or it could be a youth worker or another agency saying, actually, these young people need support. But this Upstream programme provides, you know, there's the young person saying they need that support straight away. There's a voluntary engagement. So, you know, we're asking the questions, those young people, if they feel they want to answer those questions, they're doing that right from the start, you know, and every point it's up to them really to engage. And we're starting at where that young person is, you know, in their life. And then with regular screening, you know, we're measuring that journey, but also you know, having discussions with the young people about where they are at that point, you know, where their journey's taking them, you know, so it's, you know, a really on point programme. For us as a service in Cardiff, you know, we're using this to make sure that we're providing safe spaces for young people, you know, for their development, but also for their well-being. That might be a safe space online, in a centre, on the street, at home, in school. And I think this identifies young people that maybe they have a safe space in school, but actually they're suffering outside of that, or within families, or, you know, in isolation. So it's bringing those people to the forefront, which is really positive for the work that we're doing. I've said it's young person centred, so it provides an insight into the young person's life that not necessarily us as professionals, we might not realise, you know, what these young people are experiencing. So it's kind of the hidden issues are coming to the forefront. So I think the more that we screen people, the more that we are working with these young people, the better response that we're going to provide. And it just allows for more appropriate and bespoke response, you know, to the young people's needs. It does raise questions, I suppose, about the areas of needs and identifying young people that, you know, not already identified through measures that we've got in place. So I think, you know, that's going really well. We're schools in particular are looking at, actually, there's young people in their cohort that they might not realise they're having issues. And the tool for us is a good way of measuring impact and distance travelled, and especially to, you know, to identify the impact that services are having on young people. Often that's quite difficult for youth services to do in particular. You know, we're working with young people, but do we really know the impacts we're having on their lives for future? But I think if we're consistently measuring or revisiting this questionnaire with young people, then we can really look at that impact in more detail. Challenges, obviously, COVID has you know, provided a challenge for all of us. You know, the numbers of young people accessing Upstream and the numbers of of young people identified and then offered support is not where we wanted that to be after the first year. I mean, but we're going into the second year with a really positive attitude, and, you know, we've all changed and adapted the ways that we're working to make sure that, you know, we're engaging young people on the streets, within youth provisions, within schools, and we're building on that now throughout the summer to a point where we get back in September, we'll be raring to go.
Hey, Laura, sorry to interrupt. Could you go on to slideshow so that we'll know which slide we're on? Is that okay? Because the slides aren't moving for the panel, for the audience.
Okay.
Don't worry, don't be daft. You know, this is welcome. Perfect.
Well, can you see that?
Yeah, we certainly can. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, so one of the challenges, it exposes the need, I suppose, within schools, within communities, the thematic needs, and I suppose it does raise a question and debate then about who provides that support and where does that responsibility lie? Is that with the school, the education department, or, you know, other people in that area? So, I mean, I suppose challenges, questions, you know, is quite an interesting debate going forward. Also then that has an impact on the demand of services, securing additional resources to meet that increased demand or to meet that bespoke need within that young people are coming through with, and where does that responsibility lie? Challenges for us, it helps, I suppose, to increase the reach and to work with more young people and, you know, really focus on improving their well-being and the issues that they're having and reducing that risk of homelessness. But obviously, when that's rolled out, there's going to be challenges in terms of the wider school network, how that's going to happen. You know, the potential is huge, and I suppose we just need to do baby steps to get to that point. Future opportunities. We're really excited in Cardiff about going into the second year of the pilot. The data is brilliant. You know, it picks up a lot of issue-based themes young people are coming back with. It provides an opportunity, you know, to look, to compare and contrast with different data sets that we've got, you know, really home in on areas of need and who's going to work with those young people, what agencies can we bring in, who's more suitable to provide support in their specialist areas. So the potential for partnership, it really backs up that, to drive that forward and tackle more complex issues, you know, that actually, you know, youth workers, we often have really good relationships with young people, and we can provide that support and wraparound support for that young person who then will access those specific agencies. So, you know, really good opportunities for us to develop our provisions and our practice. Preventative, well, there's been a lot of discussion about, you know, using Upstream to really provide preventative provision and support for young people and identifying issues much earlier, and provide that bespoke support so that, you know, for us, that will have a really big impact on the work that we're already doing in schools, using the vulnerability assessment profiling tool that often just looks at education, behaviour, attainment of young people, and often, you know, focusing as they're leaving year 11. So I think utilising this tool earlier on in the school, or younger age groups, you know, really help and support that programme as well that we're doing. And I think, you know, it might help with when we're applying for resources, you know, looking at capacity, the time we've got, you know, to run the tools, the impact that it's having. There's just so much like potential within the programme. I've spoken about partnerships and referrals to other agencies. So I think, you know, just to finish, final thoughts really, you know, we're really positive about the prospect of using Upstream now going into the second year in Cardiff and within the youth service, supporting the schools, you know, that are piloting that for us. You know, it really is young person led. It's providing young people a voice, which we've been continually trying to develop throughout the last year especially, and provide really bespoke provision for the young people that we're working with. So we're really positive and we're really happy with the way things are progressing, and we really look forward to the future developments as well. So yeah, thanks. That's for me. Sorry, it's a bit. I was trying to.
Now that was amazing, Laura, and I think you've helped to answer some people's questions. It's about the hidden issues coming to the forefront, identifying issues earlier, and what is so important, it is about collaboration and us working together. That was amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on now to Adam. The involvement and the support of the schools is absolutely crucial and key to ensuring that we allow young people to self-identify, and we couldn't have done it without the amazing local authorities and the amazing schools that have engaged with us. So I'd like to welcome Deputy Head of St Illtyd's, Adam. And Adam's going to talk about some of the challenges of implementing the survey, but the value of the data and some of the emerging and potential impacts. So over to you, Adam. Welcome.
Hi, guys. Thank you, Francis. Yeah, really, I'm coming at it from obviously a school point of view. Laura, Talog, I've already said a lot of what I'm going to be saying, but I don't think that's a bad thing because it shows that we are all working together. And it's just, yeah, given a different viewpoint from rather than outside agencies, we're actually the ones implementing it and how we're actually doing it in our school. I do think for the input that we have to put into it, we're getting so much more out of it. Not to mention that it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. So, straight away, to me, that's a win. We look at it from a whole school point of view. It gives you the analysis. Talog mentioned the fact that straight away you can see your analysis versus Cardiff. Now, I'm not sure, this is a question for Talog afterwards, that when I compare our school to the Cardiff one, is that just against other schools in Cardiff, or whether that's against, I know that you were doing some work with the prison service as well, and looking at that. So whether that ties in with that or whether it's just a school. On top of that, then another analysis straight next to that is another bar chart about individual year groups. So you get to tackle it not only on a whole school level, but on a year group level as well. So in terms of a whole school, it gives you an area of focus. So for example, it may be one of the sections is resilience. I know somebody asked the question earlier, what are the different areas? Just in case you haven't seen the chat, it's education, wellbeing, resilience, and housing. They're the 4 areas. And it does, because from there then you can delve deeper from that into individuals, and then from there then what questions came out low for that individual. So it gives you that whole school focus with topics. So for example, one of ours that's come out, especially, it's no surprise with COVID, the mental health of our pupils isn't where we would like it. So that's going to be a whole school push for us next year. It may be, well, it identified in one of ours that more than the rest of the average of the school, they've said that they've experienced a bit of bullying. So within that year group, then that's going to be a real focus on that side. From there, then you can also export the data into Excel. So you're then looking at the individual for each year group. So then we do it where I give that to the heads of year. They then look at the individual scores for each topic, and we look at that. I'm quite lucky because I've got quite a large wellbeing team. So our assistant heads of year would then actually go and talk to those individuals. Because you know what, all kids are like, it's not just every now and again they're going to just press a button to answer it. So it's about then having those conversations and delving deeper and making sure, right, okay, if there is a thing going at home, it also gives you an in. That's the other thing. to potentially difficult conversations. I know somebody said about how does home react when you phone up about it. I think it's very much about, you don't go guns blazing and you're a bit more tactful. And the reports that you get from it, you've already had the conversation with the kids, so you know far more about it, and it leads you into it. So it's worth taking that time. You could use your form tutors to do that. Laura said about Pupil Voice. It's very much about Pupil Voice. It's great. It's not a standalone, like, because that's the pupil side. We also use it to tie in with Thrive or Boxall. We use both here as well, just to look at if there's any developmental well-being side. From a secondary point of view, one of the things that my wife's a primary school teacher, the way she talks about the connection that she has with parents, we never have that at secondary school to that level. I think our school is pretty good with contact, but this has brought it to a whole new level in terms of finding out, about the community, what's going on, and chatting about them, about their lives and things. So again, it just, as I said, it gives the in. What I like is the referral process to get in, either the mediation or the emphasis workers in place is just so quick and easy. Unlike other referrals potentially in the past for other outside agencies to work, it's a case of it's so simple because they have use of the data straight away as well. You're not importing it from Sims, commenting for it about the behavior, what the behavioral scores are from Sim, the attendance and things. All the data is kind of there already that for them to, or have a real in-depth knowledge of the kid, because they can see the questions again that they've answered to. They come in. From my point of view, I wish I had more time with them. I wish they had more. They're both my emphasis and mediation worker. They're flat out. There's referrals waiting. Obviously, we don't just rely on them. We use the data, as I said, in school. So we have to pick who would be best to work with them, and then we obviously provide resilience in school, self-esteem, etc. So it's about working with that. We work closely with obviously the youth service as well. So recently I've been in contact with Simon Evans from the youth service, so he's going to come in and deliver some cohort work for us as well, but further down the school. Again, I think Laura said about or Talo about a lot of ours has been year 11, especially with the VAP. This is very much a whole school thing. We're implementing it all the way down to year 7. We're going to be using our PSE lessons to implement this. It's about 20 minutes to half an hour for the pupils to input their stuff or to do the questionnaire. So it's not that taxing. It's not, you're not talking about a kid sitting there. It's not an examination. Okay, it's nothing like that at all. On the best part, the kids understand the questions. One that's come out is the fact that they don't really know what the word to be optimistic is, so quick explanation of that. Great, and that's it. That's really the only issue that we've had in terms of that. Passwords. That's been the one thing. My advice would be the easiest way we've now found it is actually put them all into the spreadsheets, into Excel, and then you can actually mail merge it across the entire class, and then they've actually got it electronically to put it across, because the passwords are randomly generated. That is that is an issue that we've come up with. So that's that. Is there anything else before I get shouted at by Francis? It is about the collective effort. I'll come back to what David said. This, I don't know, for me, has just brought a lot of outside agencies together. We've mentioned the youth service and obviously the Upstream project, but then it ties in with Careers Wales. We do a lot of work with them around this now as well. The Pupil Voice, you definitely can use it for Estin. You do get some pretty stuff out of it, the bar charts that Talog said. They are amazing. It is instantaneous. All you do is click print, boom, you've got it. You've got that data, as I say, for a whole school, for year groups, and you can target, as we've said, individuals as well. Yeah, I just come back to the fact that, as far as I'm concerned about inputting, it's minimal. And I think the output that I've got is been tremendous. You know, that's my viewpoint. Well, that's how we feel as a school, because obviously it's not just me doing it, it's my colleagues as well. And it has raised some bits and some pupils. Some pupils that we haven't been picked up from VAP. Even when we've inputted, you know, obviously we get VAP sent to us. We then input our bit on it that we think and that we know of. And this has actually shown up some people that hadn't been on there. So people that would have slipped through the net, you know, this covers that side of it. And I do think that was kind of, for us, the missing piece. So we've got that now. And now it's a case of, well, just rolling forward. Yeah, I would definitely think if everybody takes this on, we need to look at it. You'll have to look at employing more more people, because the demand is great, is really, really good. We've just finished an analysis of our year 8s. We're going to be doing it twice a year, at the beginning and the end. And obviously, it's an easy way to measure impact as well. You know, that's the other thing, because you could do it multiple times, and on there as well, it does compare their first one to the second one. So the fact that that does it automatically, there's no you're not having to do anything. It does it all for you. Computer program, as Talog said, the fact that it's all electronic, happy days. You press a button, you press print, you've got that data. It gives you that time then to talk to the students, to do what we've all come into education for, which is to help progress. It helps you to teach the behaviors and teach the resilience that you want. You know, we're very big in schools about teaching the literacy and numeracy to pupils. We don't always teach the desired behaviors, the desired resilience, given the role models, because that's one of the things. Role models, some have said that they don't have role models, so therefore then we're able to do that. Whether
okay, thank
sorry.
you so much, Adam.
That's fine, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I just think it is so rich to hear your direct experience, and what is so wonderful is you know, as you say, it does it all for you, but the most important thing is we all work together. And that was amazing. I can see that we're going to be trying to rescue out of that school and to be speaking right the way across Wales, because that in-depth knowledge and understanding of how it works and what it brings was truly wonderful. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much, Adam. I'm going to move on now to the final bit before the questions, the early Upstream Cymru findings on the risks of youth homelessness. And it's a pleasure to introduce no stranger to the fight against youth homelessness and homelessness in Wales, Dr. Pete Mackie and Erin Doherty from Cardiff University. So over to you both, and thank you.
Oh, Fran, thank you. Right, now my turn to to struggle with the tech. Here we go. Can you see that okay? Yeah, super duper. Right, so in hindsight, given that we pulled this order of the programme together, I wish I'd put the boring data bit first, having now to follow all those brilliant insights, detailed insights. But look, Erin and I are going to talk through some of this, you know, the survey that everyone keeps referring to. But the hope is kind of in 10 minutes, you'll get some sense of how useful it is when you just ask young people from their perspective about how things are going, and you'll get a real sense of the state, the state of things in Wales. We'll talk through the 4 different sections. So again, that's been alluded to, around well-being, around education engagement, around resilience, and then homelessness. And Erin and I will split that up. There is a plan. There is a plan to give a more detailed report in the end of this month, early August, where we'll put all this data out there so you've got it to look through in your own time. But without further ado, I'll pass on to Erin to talk you through the wellbeing results.
Hi. So one of the sections was well-being. So we gave the pupils 7 statements and asked them to say to what extent they agreed or disagreed with those statements. The well-being questions covered how they think and feel about their future, their sense of self-worth, how they deal with issues in life, and how close they feel towards friends. Now, for context, the population average for low well-being is 15%. But from our cohort of pupils that took the survey, 31% had low well-being. 31%, that's almost double the amount of the average population. Now, obviously, there may have been an impact with COVID, not being able to see your friends or family, or being stuck at home with the family a lot. But even so, that is a really concerning figure. And only 8% have high well-being. So most people have moderate at 62%, but 31 have low. So risk of school disengagement is part of our education section. That section we split up into 2, risk of school disengagement and bullying. So in the survey, pupils were asked 6 statements. In this, if their score is higher, the higher the risk of school disengagement. There are some questions in this that we don't usually see recorded in normal administrative data. So normal administrative data, you might have things about regularly skipping school, not attending, not having good grades. But there are questions that we asked within this survey area, things like getting along with teachers. So 13% of pupils said they do not get along with most of their teachers, and 5% say they regularly skip school. There's also getting in trouble at school, which is something that wouldn't necessarily be recorded in normal data collection, but it's something that can have a huge impact on young people's disengagement from education. So in total, 13% have a medium to high chance of school disengagement, which is obviously quite high still. Pete, could you go on the next one? So then we have experiences of bullying. So this covers how often these young people are experiencing bullying. You can see in this is the individual question data, the amount of times, the frequency of the young people that are being bullied. So in total, 18% of people reported being bullied at least 1 to 2 times a month, and then 7%, which is staggering, have reported being bullied every single day. Obviously, schools do a lot of work towards bullying, but there's still quite a long way to go. And all of these factors together can sort of increase the risks to these young people. Pete?
Super, thanks, Erin. I'm just jumping around this screen so I can see the nice bar graphs that we've produced. Right, so those are stark messages. The third of the categories that we talked about is resilience. And so pupils are asked these 13 statements, and they're asked to what extent they're true, and you can respond yes, no, or sometimes. And just to give you an example of 2 of those statements and the responses, so 7% of young people said they don't have a trusted adult, and 13% only sometimes have a trusted adult. Now that's, for anybody that's working in youth homelessness, we know how significant that is on its own as an indicator of prevention of youth homelessness. What we don't talk about so much is this second point, which is 5% of the young people said they don't have friends who stand by them when times are tricky, and 26% only sometimes have friends who stand by them when times are tricky. Those peers, that network of support, whether it's trusted adult or your peers, is really significant on its own in terms of preventing youth homelessness. So this data gives us some insights into areas where we might work in these young people's lives. And the scale below, when we kind of bring all these together and combine the responses, 11% of young people had low levels of resilience. So moving on to the homelessness figures. So family homelessness, pupils were asked 4 questions about home life that might indicate a risk of family homelessness. Again, 2 examples. So 4% of the young people said that the family couldn't pay the rent or the mortgage. 5% reported moving 3 or more times in the past year. Both of those are signs of housing instability, not youth homelessness, where it's the young person leaving the family home, normally due to conflict. This is family homelessness, but we're identifying it through the young person's voice. And when we look at levels of risk, 11% are at high risk, so they've ticked at least one of those boxes, and 2% are immediate priority. Now, importantly for these young people, and we're not there yet at this stage, but those should be young people and their families going to housing options, and a real chance to prevent homelessness early and identify risk. Youth homelessness. So pupils are asked 8 questions about home that may indicate risk of youth homelessness. 2 questions to give examples. So 4% of pupils strongly agree that they get into lots of conflict with parents and guardians, and 7% of pupils slept away from home because they were kicked out, ran away, or didn't feel safe to stay. Now we combine the results of those questions to again come up with a kind of a risk scale. And what we know is that 5% of young people are an immediate priority. They're essentially safeguarding priorities because they've said that they're either not safe at home or that they've been homeless that year. And then a further 5% are a high priority because there's lots of conflict at home, they've slept away from home, or they're worrying about running away. So that 10% we need to be working with. The Llamau team at the moment need to be working with them. There are others that may have vulnerability, but they're an absolute must. And then I'm just going to come on to a final slide. Sorry, Fran, if I go over, but this one's really important because it talks to some of the questions. Is what we often get told is, yeah, but don't we know about those young people already? I mean, every time I talk about this project, somebody goes, yeah, they're the ones that don't turn up at school. They're the ones that are behaving badly in class. We know about them. And Adam kind of mentioned it as well. But this really echoes findings that David and co had in Australia. This graph is too complicated, so I'm going to focus just on the one bar. So I'll focus on this bar. This is young people at high risk of homelessness. So reflect on the previous slide. Young people at high risk of homelessness. And then the bar is telling us their risk of school disengagement. And it says 28% of those young people who are at high risk of homelessness, there are no signs of school disengagement, none at all, like none. So they are not on the radar because of engagement issues in school. And a further 37% have only low levels of disengagement, which means they're probably not visible to or on the radar either, because that's the majority of folk, even those who aren't at risk of homelessness. So 37 plus 28, what's that? Like 65% are probably not on the radar. The others, likely already on the radar, we know about them. We might not have known stuff was going on at home, but they were on the radar. But 65% probably weren't. And I think that's an important finding, that when we ask young people themselves, we do find out stuff and risks that we didn't know. That's it. Sorry, I think I did run just a little bit over, but I got excited. I shall leave it there and hand over for questions.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Pete. That's absolutely amazing. And I think that's the key. I think that is what we are talking about. And that is why we got so excited when we started to look into Geelong. And that is why Llamau has pushed hard. And we've got amazing funders, but 65% were not on the radar. Not because anybody's doing anything wrong, not because there is any criticism of current services, but because what we are showing and what Geelong started to show is that our systems are not set up. Yes, the amazing professionals, the intervention workers, but we are waiting for young people to demonstrate crisis, to demonstrate trauma, to demonstrate there is something going extremely wrong in their lives before we pick them up. Upstream doesn't do that. Upstream allows them to self-identify when and how it's happening. And I think that is the absolute key. Now we're going to go through some questions. I'm going to ask Sam from Llamau to be prepared to answer some questions as well. Talog, we've got Pete, and I'm going to start to go through some of the questions that we've got. And, you know, I think I'm trying to start, so I'm going right back to the beginning, guys, to make sure. We had a question about examples of how this approach has really turned some individuals' lives around. Michelle gave some fantastic examples on that, but I'm going to ask whether Adam or Sam would like to come in and just answer a couple, give another example.
I don't mind. I've got this one girl in my head when I read the question straight away that came into it. She was struggling massively. She was working with the emphasis person before then. Her attendance and punctuality was rock bottom, really down. Almost a non-attender, not quite, but heading that way. Been working with the emphasis worker, as I've said, and actually her attendance has improved by almost 10 to 15% over the course of a term and a half. So she's engaged, she's now smiley, happy around the place, which we didn't have that young lady like that before. So if you talk, you know, in terms of a visible effect, you know, we're seeing that already. You know, so it goes to show the work that they have done does work.
Thank you so much, Adam. Sam, do you want to come in with another example, or is that okay?
I think that's okay. I think we've done the examples. It's probably best to get on to some of the other questions. Okie
doke. So a question we've got is where upstream pilots are taking place, how do the upstream workers engage with the youth homeless coordinators and avoid duplication of approach because of youth homelessness coordinators being funded to carry out prevention work? I'm going to hand that over, but what I would say is I think the key message for everybody to understand is there are more young people than there are the colleagues and the workers to do this early intervention work. You know, it is not a question of duplication, it's a question of coordination, collaboration, and also working together to ensure that we work out who's the best person. But Sam or Cardiff, Sam, do you want to go on to that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think that as we've set up, that when we were setting up the pilots, it was absolutely based on a collaborative approach. So we worked really closely with all the departments in the local authorities. So with youth services, with education, with children's services and housing and homelessness, to make sure that we weren't duplicating services and working really closely. As Fran said, and as the evidence that Peter just gone through shows, that we are identifying young people that aren't actually on the radar of any other young people. And the youth homelessness coordinators are doing a lot of post-16 work, and we're taking it younger, but it's absolutely done in partnership and working really closely with them.
Thank you, Sam. We've got a question which would be very interesting. What have been the responses from parents when children are identified at risk with survey? And I know that Adam touched on this. Adam, I don't know if you want to come in on that, and then Sam or Talog.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's quite funny actually. Our parents have been quite receptive. You know, as I said, you don't go in guns blazing. You know, it's very much we do it as a well-being questionnaire. You know, it covers all areas. That's our in. And the importance, as I said, is delving down into the individual questions as well. So you've got that information before you actually contact the parents. Well, you see, as I said, we're lucky we have good rapport with our parents and things like that. But actually, two examples of it where they're going to the mediation side. So this happened last week. Parents came in and they were like, I know, there is this conflict, and actually they were quite relieved that actually there's somebody helping out and mediating it. I just can't get through to this child. You just don't listen to me. And you know, it was really, really nice. It was great. So we found them really receptive, bottom line.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just going to ask if David and Tammy might come in, because we've had a question, and I think it's really important for our colleagues across England and Scotland, Ireland and Europe, is how have you got government on board? Just to give you a bit of context as well, you know, this is something that we need to work on in Wales, because we are finding that our Welsh government colleagues, even though they commissioned this work, are sometimes a bit worried about having too many systems and a bit worried about having too many frameworks. So Tammy and David, how can we get our governments on board and getting them pushing this for us?
Look, I think my brief comment would be that what made the difference from Geelong was when we were able to go to the minister. We eventually got a meeting with the minister and another minister in Parliament House, and we had a single page infographic where we were able to show the actual outcomes that we had achieved. And getting to that does take a fair bit of effort. It does take some time. It's the outcomes data ultimately that will convince politicians and government to say, we're going to take this to a wider scale. You know, there's still a fair bit of work to advocate that to. It does mean that they've got to change other things. There is a reform agenda associated with the development of the model. And, you know, systems do need to change. I think governments do find it difficult to get rid of legacy programs that aren't working very well, because there's political consequences when you try and do it. So we put a lot of effort into that kind of advocacy, meeting with advisors, meeting with politicians, working with people in departments. Through that collective effort, eventually you hope to break through and get some of the changes that you need. So would you add anything to that, Tam? Maybe Tam's not there, or got her.
Sorry, no, I am here. I couldn't hit the unmute button. No, I think I agree with you, David. I think that, you know, the way forward lies in advocacy, but for us, we've been successful with the advocacy somewhat because we've had the outcomes there. So, you know, and that's, I think it's the outcomes and, you know, the key significant outcomes that we achieved in Geelong, that 40% reduction of youth homelessness. And then at the same time, you know, without additional funding, you know, there was a 20% increase in school completion rates. So that has been so important for us in terms of the advocacy and moving forward.
In terms of just the AIAD data, I was taking great interest when Pete was talking and Erin. If you can show that you reduce the risk over time, that's an important finding. What we've done is we've been able to match up the AIAD data, some school data, with data, client data of people getting support from the homelessness system. And we have a system called entry points, so we can kind of connect those two data sets and actually show the community-wide impact. We're hoping to do that in New South Wales, but they don't have entry points. So there's all sorts of problems when you try and do something as new as that, and when you try and match data at a local level, but we're getting there. It's the outcomes that make the difference ultimately.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to move on to sort of two questions which kind of connect, which is, you know, quite understandable. It is like, you know, hang on a minute, we've already got youth homeless prevention programs. We already have early identification. We already have support. And how does this approach differ from other sort of family individual support offers in relation to housing and homelessness outcomes? I so want to answer those questions, but I have the role of the chair. So I'm going to hand over to Pete. Would you like to? And then Sam?
Yeah, well, I think equally Tal could adopt this one, but the key difference is that this is young people identifying themselves. So that's the first key difference. The second one is that we're doing that earlier. So this is happening in secondary schools. Every other intervention that we have around youth homelessness starts at crisis point at 16 or 17 or even a wee bit older. So those are two key differences: young people self-identifying and happening earlier. But you know, when I have conversations with Simon at the youth services in Cardiff, and Adam was talking about it there, we cannot meet the level of need that is being identified. You're having to prioritise within those that are identified as needing some support. My goodness, if we ever get to the situation where we say, let's not support Upstream because we think it'll duplicate, we're crazy. Honestly, we're crazy, because it's one, it's identifying additional need, but two, it's bringing additional support for those young people. There is plenty for others in youth service and others to be doing. So that's my initial reaction to it.
Sam, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Pete said. What I would say is that when Talog looks at the list of young people and they've done the survey, he sits down with the key member from the school and looks at that list, and then makes sure that we're not, if that young person's already got a lot of services working with them, then we move on to the next young person, because as Pete said, there are so many young people that need support. So we're absolutely not duplicating services, we're working in tandem with services, and again, as Pete said, we're going younger. The other point to make is that our mediation and our emphasis services at Llamau have been going for over nearly 2 decades. So we know what we're doing. We know how to get young people to engage in it, whether it's at crisis intervention or at the early intervention that we're talking about here.
Thank you. And there's a really interesting question. I wonder if Talog might be interested in telling us a little bit more, and Adam, and perhaps Laura or Phil, because could you tell us more about how the project was presented to students in the participating schools?
Shall I go first?
Nice one, Talog.
I think ideally moving forward into next year, because obviously this year has been a bit of a bumpy one, but I think moving forward, mediation services around Llamau are already doing a lot of PSE work, so we're going in and discussing what homelessness is, because I think amongst the wider community and school community, it's kind of there's quite a lot of misunderstanding about what youth homelessness is. So I think that's something that we're aiming for next year, is to do maybe some PSE work around with the classes. This year, we're basically going in the survey runs that I've done, we do a little bit of a introductory speech first and let them know what services are coming in, what's on offer. A lot of schools, Adam is bravely soldiering on by himself with this one, so he's done a lot of the surveys, so I don't know how he's addressing it with his pupils beforehand. But yeah, I think information is power, isn't it? And keeping the young people informed about what's going on is really important. Because that also means that the voice that they're giving us is genuine. It's something that they're doing with information. I think that's really important.
Lovely, thank you, Talog. Adam, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, as I said earlier, we do it as, we never present it as a homelessness or preventing a homelessness survey or any, it's a well-being. You've got resilience in there, you've got the educational side, it's about them just saying it. And I know another question is about with parents and opting out and things. Again, it's about the wording. You've got, you don't put them on the back foot, because it's not like they read that, and as Talog said, knowledge is power, but they haven't got that knowledge yet. So it's creating it or wording it in a way that it's meant to be a supportive, a helpful, it's like restorative justice, is a non-blame thing. It's about working together to move forward.
Lovely, thank you very much, Adam. And related to that, some people have said that in their experience, there's sometimes a resistance for young people to discuss problems they're having at home for fear of highlighting wider issues such as drugs, alcohol. So have you had any experiences as yet where parents have objected to their children taking part in the survey?
Is that for me?
It's for whoever wants to jump in.
Look, you're always going to get in anything you do, you're always going to get the one or two. But what I would say is that would be a red flag or a red herring straight away for me. So, all right, they may not do the questionnaire, but straight away, if there was that, we as a wellbeing team, we would certainly be talking with our pupil and just making sure that everything's all right. They may not be filling it out, but you've got the questions there anyway, and there's many ways to go about it.
Lovely, thank you. Sam, I know you were involved. We've got a question about what was the biggest challenge for the schools in getting involved. So I think it'd be very interesting to know from Llamau's point of view and then from the school's point of view.
Yes, thanks, Fran. So I suppose, again, this was part of our collaborative approach. We've absolutely gone from collaboration with the local authority and with the schools. So we looked at the data we already had in the areas that we're working with to see what schools young people were coming from. Pete in the university looked at work with the local authorities to look at the 16+ homelessness data to see what geographical areas young people were coming from. And then we worked with the education departments to identify those schools in those areas, but also those schools that we thought would be interested and willing to take part in a pilot. And then we went and sold it to them, basically. So it was absolutely about collaboration. And what we were trying to show was that although we knew that it would take a number of years before we saw the effects of the reduction in numbers of people presenting as homeless at 16 because of the age group we're working with, what we were really clear about is, again, from the amazing work that the Australians have done, we could see that the survey and the intervention show that there was increased attendance, which also led to increased attainment at school. So it felt like a win-win thing. And I think, Adam, probably over to you to see what it was that made you agree to take part, really.
So many things. Look, my thing is, if ever you're presented with an opportunity to help young pupils, young people, why wouldn't you? That's the whole reason why we're in education. It's costing you absolutely nothing. Why wouldn't you give it a go? And we did, and I'm so pleased we have. You know, as I say, it's not just about the fact that we get those additional supports. Obviously, we were in one of those areas that was identified as a need within the community. But it's also helped us with the PSE elements as well, and what we need to do as a school as well to help our pupils attain, you know, get the GCSEs, because until we sort these issues out, self-actualization can't occur. You know, they can't go on and get the GCSEs that they want. So for me, it was a no-brainer. You know, I would say, again, for the output, the input is nothing. You know, 20 minutes survey that you have to give, time that you have to give up twice a year. And you get this data, you get the pupil's voice that you wouldn't, you know, in a way that you wouldn't have had before. So yeah, I would advise everybody to do it.
That's wonderful to hear, Adam. Thank you very much. Just sort of taking it forward a little bit, Laura and Phil, is there anything you'd like to add about, you know, what was it that made Cardiff think, yeah, this is something we're going to work with and collaborate?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Phil. Yes,
Phil, you're fortunate not to have my picture up there. So Erin's obviously blocked me with that one, haven't seen me before. So no, it's all of those things that Sam said. You know, it was collaborative work and a lot of discussion to be absolutely clear it was the right thing for us. Mainly because, not because we didn't think it was a good product, but because there's so much pressure put on schools in terms of, you know, what we're asking them to do. But the key part for me was three things. One was that the youth service grant had a key element about homelessness, and we didn't find anything that was better than this, and it sort of landed in our lap, which helped us not to have to look too far. But you know, we had a really positive discussion. It just made enormous sense. The other two parts of that were, as Adam said, young person's voice. We're pushing as Cardiff to be a child-friendly city, working with UNICEF. So this is a really important part of listening to young people, and that's really key and should be key to everything we do. Because although we think we're experts, we really don't know what's going on. And the last part of it for me was, you know, I wish I'd branded the name Upstream because it's just perfect. You know, the link with contextual safeguarding is enormously important. Schools are a really important part of the context in which young people exist. And we need to look at that context more than focusing on the harm that's done at the other end of that scale. So we take an approach which looks at the context, the risk, and then the harm. We've got a young person safeguarding strategy which was designed and promoted by young people, and it's looking at the extra familial part of safeguarding, which I think the schools are in a really good position to do. That's not the whole part of it, but this allows us to listen to young people and actually provides us with a lot of data. And I know Adam's been working closely with Simon, our homelessness coordinator, on this, but actually provides us with some lower level concerns which can be addressed in other ways. And we're using that to enhance our vulnerability assessment profile, to put additional support in, but for other needs as well. So it's we knew from an early point discussing with Sam and Pete that it isn't just about somebody's got a housing issue. There's all those other interrelated issues that are so important, that may contribute to homelessness, but will contribute to some sort of disengagement, or certainly increase risk and possibly harm. So if we start looking at the context of that early on, and as I said, child-friendly city and contextual safeguarding, the three things interlink nicely. So that's it for us, and it's a very it's a very user-friendly tool, as Adam has said. It identifies a range of needs, and I think it's very everybody's welcomed it, haven't they, Adam, in terms of using it?
Yeah, they have very, very much. And with that, just from my point of view, as in wellbeing in school, the hardest thing is actually measuring impact. Because it's all, you could say it, and the only thing that we really had was like attendance and things, in terms of, yes, the attendance has increased and things like that. This actually gives you numerical data that you can actually use from your baseline to showing the impact of all the stuff that you're doing in school as well. So for a whole school approach, you've got that. Sorry, I just felt I wanted to share.
No, thank you. That's great. And I think as well is, what we've got to get our heads around is that Upstream Cymru is what we mean true early intervention. You have the universal prevention, which is beyond most of our controls, because we know that deals with poverty and people, and inequalities. But upstream, is the next line. It's that universal intervention, and it is so important. Now, we've had some questions around, very excited about the survey and the screening tool. So if local authorities have got a really well-established COS type of model, what they're looking for is maybe just to, add in that survey and that screening tool. I know we would be very interested in talking to you, just get in contact with us. Pete, I don't know if you'd like to say a little bit on that.
Yeah, we're in conversations now. I think the idea was to get this year of a pilot going, because we've been adapting things. We've been learning. We've adapted massively from the original Australian survey. We've learned from the Americans who are also piloting this. So we're now in a fairly good place with the survey itself, and are in conversations with how we can support local authorities to use the tool and then wrap their services around, because I think we all agree is it will identify more demand than you've got services. So we may as well move it out. So we're working on a model. It would need some lower level of funding to support, because we make it sound easy, but there's stuff in that survey that is quite technical. So yeah, but it would come with a small package of support, somebody like TAL, making sure that you know how to do it and all those things. But yeah, just get in touch with TAL and through Llamau.
Brilliant. Thanks, Pete. I'm just going to do one more question now before we finish, is that how do we use this pilot to upscale Upstream Cymru? How do we get the buy-in from Welsh Government? Because we are very, very well placed to roll out this approach in Wales and with the new school curriculum. What I would say is that we all need to influence our respective governments. We heard so much from Tammy earlier and David about how to do that. And I think that's what's important. We all need to be saying, this is already showing us 65% of these young people were not on anyone's radar. Hello, 40% possible reduction in youth homelessness. You know, we're talking to young people before homelessness is even on the agenda. Who wouldn't or shouldn't or couldn't want to buy in that? So, I mean, I want to ask everyone to help and support. We are just about out of time. I just want to ask any of our presenters if there's something they want to say to finish. Any message for those out there?
Just from me, if anybody wants to talk to me afterwards or email me and ask me any questions, I'm more than happy with that. Just do it. I'm happy to help in any way. Look, it's helped me massively in school, and to pass on the knowledge or anything I can, more than willing to do it.
Thank you so much, Adam. I'm going to close, but knowledge transfer, knowledge partnerships, we're all in this together. I'm bringing back to my, when I started, when I said no one agency, no one organisation, no one local authority, no one person can do this. But together, we actually could end youth homelessness in Wales, and we could support our colleagues who are going to replicate this, and they will learn, they will bring new knowledge in that can help us improve the systems. Just to finish, as somebody asked him, was it challenging to develop the digital app? In a nutshell, yes. Those of you know me, I probably have an expletive before that, but I won't, because I'm in international waters. But it was extremely difficult. But we are happy to share and support and to push that knowledge out, because all we all care about is ending youth homelessness and improving your outcomes for young people and their families. I'd like to thank Pete and Erin and Cardiff University for hosting this amazing seminar. I hope this is the start of many more conversations, because it's the old adage, if we don't do it, who else is going to? So let's all do it together. Thank you all very much indeed. Take care.